All right, strap in, everyone, because today we are diving deep, deep into a meditation technique called Soul Kernel 6.
Sounds intense. I'm ready when you are.
Yeah, and you know what's really interesting about this one? It's that it came from a, well, pretty intense personal experience, according to the guy who created it, Christopher Macor.
Oh, tell me more.
Yeah, he goes straight into this story about an 11-day hospital stay that was kind of the catalyst for this whole thing. Actually, let's just hear him introduce Soul Kernel 6 himself. Sound of audio clip playing. Hi, this is Christopher Macor, M-A-C-O-R, and I'm here to talk to you about the Soul Kernel 6. Soul Kernel 6 is actually an advanced form of Soul Kernel, and Soul Kernel came about in my life as a result of a hospital stay of 11 days, and essentially I needed to find a way of anchoring my soul into my body, and this technique presented itself. See? What'd I tell you? Talk about an attention-grabbing intro.
No kidding. You definitely don't hear that every day.
Right. Like, what happened there? What was he going through that made him create this whole system?
It really makes you think, what was going on in his head during those 11 days? What was missing that the usual methods couldn't provide? It seems like it was something really deep he was trying to address.
So there he is, stuck in a hospital bed, searching for something. And that's how Soul Kernel is born. Wild. So let's get into the specifics. How does this whole thing work?
Okay, so the first thing is he starts with this energy center, the dantian. It's just below the navel, and he focuses on the pulse in that area.
The dantian. For those of us who aren't meditation experts, could you break that down a bit?
Yeah, of course. So basically, in a lot of different traditions, the dantian is seen as this focal point for life force energy. You might also hear it called the body's center of gravity.
Interesting. Okay, so he's starting with this specific physical spot that's supposed to be an energy center. Then what? What's next?
Then he adds in something visual, a six-pointed star called a yantra.
A yantra, huh?
Basically, it's like a visual focal point for meditation, like a mantra, but you see it. And in this case, the yantra is the Star of David. He's very deliberate about mentally moving around each point of the star, driven by the pulse in the dantian.
So it's like syncing your mind and body.
Yeah.
Multitasking, but like for your inner self.
Yeah.
You've got the physical pulse, the visual focus, and the mental movement happening all at once.
Exactly.
Wow.
And then he takes it even further, adding another layer. The mantra, Om Mani Padme Hum. Each syllable goes with a point on the star.
Whoa, that's a lot to keep track of. No wonder he calls it advanced. But you know me, I always get stuck on the symbolism. He mentions upward and downward triangles, Metatron, even something about the universe and the lotus. I mean, what's he getting at with all of that?
Using all those different elements is pretty common in a lot of esoteric traditions. Each symbol just adds another layer of meaning, another intention to the practice. So it's more than just going through the physical motions. It's about engaging your energy and awareness on multiple levels.
So we've got the physical feelings, visualizations, mantras, and all this symbolism. And that's just the basic soul kernel. Sounds like he's really setting the stage for something huge here.
You're telling me. And it only gets more interesting. Because Macor says that after 9 months of practicing this technique, he felt like he had to evolve it further. That's how he got Soul Kernel 6.
Okay, now you've got me on the edge of my seat. What kind of evolution are we talking about? What did he add to take it to that next level?
So the first thing he adds is what he calls, get this, the Atlas. Pretty interesting name, right?
The Atlas. Okay, yeah, I'm curious. What is it?
It's actually pretty simple, believe it or not. You just press your tongue to the roof of your mouth.
To the hard palate.
Well, he specifically says the soft palate.
Interesting. I've never heard of that in a meditation technique before. What's the point of that?
He describes it as like building a bridge, connecting your body and your head.
A bridge, huh? I can see how that makes sense symbolically. So we're grounding ourselves in the dantian, bringing energy up through the body, and then using the tongue to connect that energy to the mind.
Exactly, like closing a circuit.
Okay, I'm following you. So that's the Atlas. And then there's that sixth element, which, I'll be honest, took me a couple listens to really grasp. What the who? That's a pretty out there name for a meditation element, even for this deep dive.
Right, that's the part that really delves into how we perceive things, how we're actually aware during meditation.
Yeah, he's talking about that moment when you realize you're focusing, but then who's doing the focusing? It's like he's going meta on meditation.
It's like he's saying, okay, you've learned to focus, now turn that focus back on itself.
Exactly. And then what? What happens?
Well, he describes it as this realization that the who you think is doing the observing.
Yeah.
It's not as solid as you might think. It's more like a vastness.
It's like that feeling you get sometimes when you meditate, where you realize that the you who's watching your thoughts
Yeah.
isn't this fixed thing. It's kind of wild when you think about
It
it.
really is. And that's where he gets the name What the Who. He's trying to point at that feeling of spaciousness, that sense of something more than just our everyday sense of self.
I can definitely see how that ties into the whole anchoring the soul and returning to spirit thing he talks about.
Yeah, it's like he's tapping into this idea that's been around in mystical traditions for centuries, right? Like going beyond the little self and connecting to something bigger. It's really interesting how he's brought all these pieces together, the grounding, the symbolism, the focus on the observer to build this whole technique.
Yeah, phenomenal.
But with all this talk about anchoring the soul and returning to spirit, it makes you wonder, like, what's the point? What's he saying the goal of Soul Kernel 6 actually is?
Well, he doesn't really come right out and say it, does he?
Not really.
And, that's kind of how it is with this kind of stuff, right? With meditation and spirituality.
Yeah, it's not always so cut and dry.
Right.
Exactly. Like, Macor doesn't give you this checklist of what to expect or, some big promise of enlightenment. Instead, it's more about the process, This flow he's describing, grounding yourself in the body through those physical sensations, the visualizations, then expanding your awareness through that what the who. It's a cycle.
So it's less about reaching a specific destination and more about the journey itself. Exploring these layers of self that he's outlined through the technique.
Right. It's almost like he's handing you a map and saying, okay, go explore. What does anchoring feel like to you? How do you experience the what the who? He leaves it open for you to find your own answers.
That makes sense. It's not like a one-size-fits-all kind of thing. It really highlights the personal nature of meditation and these kinds of practices. Well, I think it's safe to say that this technique is super intriguing. And even though Macor gave us a lot to digest, I actually like that he left some things open-ended.
Yeah, it definitely leaves you wanting more.
It does. It's like an invitation to take what he's shared and go on our own explorations. So, for anyone listening who's feeling that pull to explore, to dive a little deeper into their own awareness, maybe this deep dive has planted a seed.
And who knows? It could be the start of something amazing.